Hip hop is everywhere from commercials and movies. So I think YouTube has really opened that up for young people because they are in tune with so many different types of music. And that's what's great about hip hop always is that it combines all the styles of music.
That's today's guest, musician, producer, educator, and founder of Hip Hop DNA, Kiran Vedula, pointing out that hip hop is a part of the fabric of our day-to-day lives. Welcome to Music Ed Insights. I'm leadership trainer and former band director Alan Fire, here with composer and co-college music education program head Steve Shanley.
Each episode, Alan and I talk with national thought leaders in music education with practical insights for K-12 music educators.
Steve, tell us about our guest.
Kiran Vedula is an Indian-American musician, producer, and educator who combines hip-hop and experimental electronic music with traditional folk influences from around the world. He creates compositions, performances, and youth programs that are entertaining, vulnerable, and culturally relevant, with a focus on studying history and building community. As a composer and producer, his work has been featured on cultural outlets, including NPR, and as a performer, his work has been showcased by performing arts venues and theaters, including the Kennedy Center. Find Kiran's full bio, show notes, and resources at musicedinsights.com. Alan, what was the takeaway you had from this episode?
Students will love, learn, and stay engaged if you use hip-hop foundational concepts in the classroom. And if you already know your oar for Kodai, it's a very short and fun jump to hip-hop. What about you?
Well, I totally want to be a student in his class. He told us about this very cool resource where we can reverse search to see which pop and hip-hop songs have sampled works from classical repertoire. What a cool way for general music teachers to get students excited about Beethoven, right?
Oh, yes. And I confess I loved his metaphor of teaching as flying a kite. Hey, many thanks to our new insider, Ted Shocker, for his new membership. If you want the benefits of being a Music Ed Insights insider, head to our website to learn more. For now, let's hear this conversation with Kiran Vedula.
Kiran Vedula, welcome to the program.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me on.
We've asked you to join us today and give us some new ideas for this new year. So let's dive in. You are an expert in the integration of hip hop in the music classroom. I think this is a genre that many of our students already love. So it seems like it would be a great idea to kind of meet them where they are and use hip hop as a way to teach or reinforce musical concepts. I also think it's an important historical and cultural part of American music. So what are some first steps you think teachers could take when integrating hip-hop into their classrooms?
I like that you use the terminology, meeting the students where they're at. I think what's really important about understanding hip-hop is that it is a youth-led form of programming because it's a culture and music art form that was created by youth, by teenagers in high school, after-school centers, and local places. So I think starting with that where the students can feel that sense of agency with it. And a great way for a teacher to start that conversation is to literally pull up some YouTube and just get song suggestions from the class. And that's something I always do to try to get to know students because sometimes they'll surprise you too because they don't just listen to whatever's on today's top 40. Of course, everybody knows the top 40, but maybe they know some Missy Elliott or some Snoop Dogg or something from the 80s, Run DMC. They might have these different references either from their parents or from hearing songs. Hip hop is everywhere from commercials and movies. So I think YouTube has really opened that up for young people because they are in tune with so many different types of music. And that's what's great about hip hop always is that it combines all the styles of music.
Can I jump in and ask a quick question that I am sure that a lot of our listeners are wondering? So when I teach my college students music appreciation class and I talk about hip hop and rap, I have the luxury to not worry about the lyric content at all. I can play anything for them and it's totally cool. Probably a little different in a fourth grade classroom. So do you have any suggestions for that as you take suggestions from the students and you want to know what they're listening to and then deciding what to use as part of your program?
What's great now is you can easily search clean versions of songs. So most students will even actually do that when they're listening. But also a big part of what we do with this programming is understanding that this is a misconception about the art form, because the top 1% of music that is most perpetuated does have this content. And that's the reason why it has this content, is because you know how they always say sex, drugs, rock and roll, you know, that the dark things always sell more. So, but we have to picture that as like hip hop is this mountain underwater, and then the commercial music, whether it's Drake or Cardi B or whoever it is just at the top of this. So the next question I always get, because these were DJs and now we use beat pads and samplers and laptops, there's always a question about the investment in studio equipment. And if that's there, there are options, but in a baseline level, I always almost jokingly, but in a real way, say all you need is your mouth, your hands, and your feet to start making hip hop. And I think when it comes to these baseline music concepts, reinforcing 4/4 time is really important before you really get into anything. What I do is find creative ways to teach 4/4 time. I'll use sticky notes. So I'll start pointing at the sticky notes, and then we can show like a division. Again, now I have 8 sticky notes that I'm putting underneath those 4. So like half the class is singing like 1, 2, 3, 4, and getting them used to hearing the metronome, because a lot of digital metronomes always have a higher pitched click on the 1. So it's like dee, doo, 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 doo. So that's kind of this thing that I've noticed helps them understand that this thing is repeating. But then you can add layers of complexity of how many sticky notes you add underneath it. So that's a great way to get them started. And they're making the beat either by clapping or stomping or making some sort of sound with their mouth. So I'll go around the room, everybody pick a sound. So they might be like, yeah, or they'll clap, or they'll beat on the desk, and it's just a single hit. And then we kind of go from there.
This is great. I imagine a lot of our listeners are thinking, okay, that's not scary. I already do so much of that when I'm trying to teach 4/4 time to my students as well. But I love the idea of letting them make up their own vocalization
Yeah.
for whatever pulse or beat or count. I think that might be something new. I think they've probably done lots of clapping or stomping or even counting 1, 2, 3, 4. But yeah, you can say yeah or whatever, that would be a different way to kind of just start working on that.
And if someone is like really comfortable with or has expertise or certification in ORF, like I could see an ORF matchup with this, where some of those vocalizations that happen there, in improvisations that happen there, this would flow naturally to that. And so if a teacher's super comfortable with that, this would not be a big leap, I don't think.
Yeah, absolutely. And just reinforcing always that as hip hop being part of the African American lineage of music, improvisation is always going to be a very crucial and foundational aspect of everything you do. So basically, once that 4/4 can be understood, 1, 2, 3, 4, then you can put all types of stuff in there. You can start picking up your percussion instruments or your ukuleles, and you just start making a 2-chord progression. Like most students know, like a 1-5, like C to G chord. So C, C, G, G, repeat. And you're kind of pointing to the sticky notes on the table. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the next phase of understanding for hip hop after the 4/4 is what layering or multi-tracking is. But this idea of layering and putting the vocab word, so loop, this layer loops and it's going on 4/4 time. Now we're going to add the next layer. And you can basically do that indefinitely. Then once you create your layers, so you have your drum, doom, doom, ch, doom, doom, ch, and then your piano, doom, 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 and so on. The next level of understanding is what muting and soloing parts are. So if I have a classroom going, like let's say I have them in, just for simplicity's sake, we'll just be in 3 or 4 sections. Maybe this is like a 30-student classroom, 20 to 30 students. So these guys are all my drums. These guys are all my like ukulele / tone bars, and these are all my like just vocalization sounds. And so now drummers have made up, and each one has made up their own loop, but now I'm triggering it. So we have the metronome going, or I'm just kind of counting 1, 2, 3, 4.
And can I just ask a quick clarification? So you said the metronome, you might be playing that over the speaker, but
Yeah,
otherwise, none of this is pre-recorded. None of this, we're not using any technology. It's the students are literally the instruments and the recording studio and equipment. It's all just the people, with the exception of maybe a metronome going over a speaker.
absolutely. Yeah. And but yeah, so we have that pulse, we have that understanding, and everyone knows what their part is. So now when I point to you, 3, 4, start. The drums tune, tune, tune. 1, 2, 3, 4. Piano comes in, and I'm going around this semicircle. I guess because they can't see me, I should kind of explain what I'm doing with my hands. But the drummers are to my right, and I kind of go a semicircle around, cueing in each part. Then every part's going now. I've cued them all in, and they're just trying to maintain the loop. They're not always going to be 100% musicians, but they're generally going to be better at playing it because they came up with the part, so they understand what they're doing. The main hardest part is for them to keep understanding that their part is in relation to everybody else's part. Sometimes the drummer will kind of go in their own tempo or whatever.
No part of this is such a radical departure that any teacher should be at all reticent to give this stuff a shot.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I would remind anyone who's listening to this and planning to implement this to just get out of the way, but also it's kind of like I'm describing this you have to be the producer, you have to be in tune with it, and you have to be able to, it's like flying a kite almost, right? Like you're kind of, sometimes the wind is just flying that thing, and sometimes you're pulling that string a little bit here and there. And it's like, okay, we're trying to keep this kite on this, doing this loop. Now we can go to the technology side too of what's accessible to the schools. If you have a tablet, there's a great website called soundtrap.com. So sound and then trap.com. And there's ability to use it for free, but schools can also get a pretty affordable school rate that gives you, like, I don't even know, maybe 50 memberships. Then students can save their work. They can access their work from other devices. They can share it with their teacher. But even the free version, kids can go on there and make beats. And what is nice is there are loops that you can kind of drag and drop.
Yeah, I'm looking at this now. It looks very cool. And you're
Yeah.
right, very cheap. Yeah.
Yeah, what I like about dragging and dropping loops for the super beginners is they're still learning a lot about composition. So we talk a lot about the stairs, right? Like if you see a layout of song on your screen, it kind of looks like stairs because the first instrument comes on and then stays the whole time, and then the second instrument comes on 4 or 8 bars later. So kind of showing them that you can kind of introduce each instrument one at a time, or two at a time, and then start on a higher level of composition, figuring out where to drop out parts, bring them back in to create tension and more interest to your beat, so it's not just this 4 bar loop. I think you can do that with just dragging and dropping loops in Soundtrap without even needing to know how to play an instrument or program drums.
It looks like you can also use it on a phone, and it's
Yeah.
probably a little bit more limited. But I'm just thinking about maybe middle or high school settings where all of those kids have phones anyway, that even if they don't, if it's not a school where there's tablets or laptops available, that, all right, get your phone out, download this app, and you could still do a lot of really cool things that way.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned high school because I actually know some high school students and a little bit older, like 19, 20, who they will make a song on Soundtrap and then using their earbuds, the Apple earbuds or whatever earbuds that have the microphone, then they write their song and they record their vocals and then they put effects. They make their whole
Yeah,
album
just with
using,
a phone and earbuds that they
and
already
then
probably have.
exactly, and then they
Yeah.
post it online. Some of them actually have, tens of thousands of plays on YouTube or SoundCloud or whatever they use.
Yeah, I could see so many students just running with this. You don't
Yeah.
need to talk them into practicing music at home when it looks and feels like this.
And absolutely. And none of this is to say we don't want our kids to become curious and learn about all types of music, like I love every type of music, and in school, going to music composition school, getting my mind blown by like Steve Reich and Philip Glass, and like didn't even know music like that existed till I went to school. But then also loving like to play Ravel and Debussy and like romantic music like that. So, and a lot of hip hop songs have actually sampled, Ravel and Eric Satie and these different things. So sampling also, the more curious you get through the art form, you learn so much about music history by looking up samples. And I would recommend a website called Who Sampled. So that's WHO and then the word sampled with a D at the end, .com. And it's a community website, but it's pretty good overall. Like it's not 100% perfect. Sometimes they're missing stuff or they have the wrong thing. But if you type in like a Kendrick Lamar song and into who sampled, it'll show you the samples that it used. And I've always just geeked out on that. Every early hip hop producer said that they got all their records from their parents' record collection. So that's why you hear all this Anita Baker and Nina Simone and Roy Ayers and stuff. Like these were the early music samples, and James Brown, of course, but also like rock music, like Aerosmith and whoever else was popular in the 70s and early 80s.
So,
So
like Run DMC, they're doing the walk this way because that's what their folks were listening to. Or,
absolutely, and not only their
I
folks, but
never even really put that together. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, that's
and like
amazing.
probably all or a large majority of Black people's parents. If you think about it, that's why that beat resonated with them. That's why the tone of those drums
Yeah.
resonated with them. And these are all things that are just like in our DNA.
Well, speaking of DNA, I'm browsing this Who Sampled.
Yeah,
This is incredible.
yeah,
And the sub heading is
That's
exploring the
incredible.
DNA of music. And I'm just thinking, if we were to try to teach our class about Foire, like you can go put Gabriel Faure into this and just
yeah,
find all of these examples of where it's sampled, and you could. So
yep,
instead of trying to get the kids like hooked on, listen to this, string quartet. Here is this in a style of music that you already are going to like. And I think this could just be life changing for people who are trying to, or Mozart, all of it is in here. And
yeah,
I had no idea this existed. This would be a great resource.
yeah. Love to hear that.
So, what cool things have you been up to lately?
So my wife and I have a nonprofit called Flutes at Dawn, and the name Flutes at Dawn is a metaphor for the moment of inspiration, when the sun is rising in the morning and you hear the birds chirping. But she has a dance company called Panadanza that we work together. She has an educational aspect of it for youth and adults, but also a professional dance company, and I drum and I'll kind of produce the show. But we celebrate and showcase dance and drum traditions and song and costume from a variety of Afro-Latin traditions. So we just had a big concert at Latino Arts here, and we're wrapping up the semester with our youth programs. We just finished our adult class series. So throughout the year, we do a combination of residencies in high schools and middle schools, and we also put together our own performances with our professional group. But a lot of times, students that we meet also end up becoming part of the performances. So this last performance actually included some of our adult students who were doing so great in class that they joined us. So I love that we can continue a lot of our work, not just with young people, but with adults, because we have such an overlap of working as professional artists and as educators, and also working with professional artists who are educators and working with kids. And I would just always encourage people to just always look at it as a creative process, no matter who you're with, whether you're with professional artists, students, and then you'll always be in that act of creating. I also recently released an album called Good News. And Good News is kind of a counter to the post quarantine, post pandemic depression of just being trapped on your phone and always seeing all this crazy news about politics and violence and all natural disasters and the depression that I see in my community, I see in the world at large. I wanted to create an album to uplift people's spirits, but not only for them to listen to it, but to participate in it. So the idea was to bring people together, and all of the songs take influence. So we will touch a bit on this. All the songs take their influence from call and response traditions from around the world. So they have very simple lyrical content, but each song reinforces different things, whether it's love or togetherness or, and so this takes influence from my own traditions, from my family in India, but also all these African and Afro-Latin traditions that I've been able to study with my wife by traveling to Ivory Coast and Mexico, and she's traveled to Cuba and Brazil, and learning from masters who we've brought to Milwaukee or learned through Zoom. And me realizing the universality of all of these cultures and thinking of this as something that's really foundational to being human, the same improvisation and call and response and the way of making beats. So Good News is the album. I'm working with high school choirs and teaching them the music. I have a song called I Am Love that was recently performed with 200 middle school and high school students. That was beautiful to hear them all singing I Am Love, I Am Love. So check out the album. It's on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube.
Well, I was
Pandora.
just going to ask you that. I like to ask the creators,
Yeah.
where do you prefer, if you had your choice, when Alan and I go listen to this afternoon? I was just scrolling, and it looks like you might be on Bandcamp too. Do you get the most money if we go to Bandcamp?
Yeah.
What's ideal?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, if people want to support, Bandcamp is always the best way because you can pay what you want. You can download it for free, or you can download it for $1,000,000 if you want to show some love to your boy. No. Um,
So listening on YouTube is better than not listening at all, but ideally,
exactly.
ideally Bandcamp
Find me
or
on
something.
Bandcamp.
Yeah.
Yeah, where you can support. And yeah, if you are working with your choir at your school, feel free to learn any of the songs. Like I said, once you hear them, they're very repetitive and kind of have this A-B type of section because they're written.
That's great. And you're giving people full permission to do that right now. Anything they want to learn and
Yeah,
use and perform.
if you plan to perform it, obviously get in touch with me and we'll talk about that. But I'm just saying if you want to listen to, like I want to be involved if you're using the music.
Yep.
But if you want to start by just singing a song, sometimes for warm-ups or use them in your class, you know, sometimes people like songs like that. Feel free to use that. Absolutely.
Very cool. And you're based in Milwaukee. Do you would you come to Iowa and work with some schools
Oh,
if we asked you to?
please. This can be really difficult for music teachers a lot of times because the constraints of the job itself sometimes too. So both my wife and I do trainings for not only K through 12 teachers, but also like workers at after school centers, youth art centers, that type of thing, because we do have a more in-depth pedagogy and just personal process of helping the music teacher or the mentor not only learn some cool, more in-depth ways of working, but also kind of learning more about themselves as an artist and as an educator to really be able to apply these in a way that they feel like is really successful for them. So we'd love to go to Iowa. We'll come to Alaska. We'll come anywhere. Yeah, we're ready.
The planes
Yep.
go anywhere.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Kiran. We can't let you out, however, without the lightning round. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. What's your favorite restaurant in Milwaukee, Wisconsin?
This is going to be a very bougie answer, but there's a restaurant called Calucenzo in Wauwatosa. It's not technically in Milwaukee, I guess, but I also love going to St. Paul's Fish Market at the public market in Milwaukee.
How about a piece of music, a composer, or a performer you wish more people knew about?
There's a composer named Olafur Arnalds, and he has a piece called Woven Song. And that piece in particular, Woven Song, is really cool because he had these old recordings of some Irish folk song or something, and then he played the piano with it. And it's such a meditative piece. I listen to it all the time when I'm working.
How about a favorite film or TV series you've enjoyed recently?
I just the other night watched the movie The Green Knight starring Dev Patel. And since there are a lot of musicians out there, the film has an incredible score and just sound design and everything. And it's just filmed in a really cool way. So I would recommend checking out The Green Knight.
How about the most memorable live music you've attended?
One of my first dates with my wife was at a Pedrito Martinez concert at Latino Arts, and that was really cool because we were right there in the front row. And I would recommend anybody checking out Pedrito or Pedro Martinez. He's an amazing percussionist and singer and just like all out, like just rock star. His whole band is incredible, and they have a residency at this place called Drum in New York. So we've had a chance to connect with them again, and some of the most incredible harmonies and percussion, not to mention just full band, that you'll ever see.
And finally, a book recommendation for our listeners.
I think a lot of listeners would like the book How Music Works by David Byrne.
Oh, I love that one.
Yeah, I like this book. One of my favorite things that he touches on a lot, it's kind of a theme throughout the book, is how important the context of music is, how it's presented. And, like hip hop music in the West Coast came out of car culture. So it's very bass heavy and doesn't have too much else going on other than a little bit of high end. Or, Gregorian chants developed out of these huge high arching cathedrals. So that's why they have very long, slow notes. And I think that's really important for us to always think about, is what's the context of the music and the instruments and stuff that we're using.
Kiran Vedula, thank you so much for joining us today. It's interesting stuff. It's accessible stuff. It's stuff that's going to engage students. So it's just been an awful lot of fun. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for the invite. Take care, you guys.
Thanks for listening to Music Ed Insights.
We're supported by Group Dynamic, a leading provider of youth leadership workshops. Alan works with dozens of schools each year to help develop their leaders. Learn more at groupdynamicyouth.com.
Or you could email me at alan@groupdynamic.net. Also sponsored by the Co-College Music Education Program. They've got a website too.
Just click their link at our website or email me at shanley@coe.edu.
Also, The Normal Design, helping normal companies and people create memorable, meaningful, and professional designs and branding. More at thenormaldesign.com.
And Winterset Websites, website design and maintenance. wintersetwebsites.com.
Our Facebook page is Music Ed Insights.
Our website has program notes, links, and a one-page download of this episode's key takeaways. That's on musicedinsights.com.
You can expect a new episode most Mondays during the school year.
Get current.
Stay relevant.
Music Ed Insights.